Good afternoon. My name is Turid Løvskar, and I'm from Bazaar Forlag. And I'm very delighted to introduce David Safier and Erlend Loe, who are going to talk about ideas. Where do they come from, and how do you make them work? Both authors are masters of apparently crazy ideas. They know how to make their readers smile and often laugh out loud. But through their often wild characters, they manage to move us. Okay, then I start. Yes. Erlend Loe and David Safier are masters of apparently crazy ideas. They know how to make their readers smile and often laugh out loud. But through their often wild characters, they manage to move us and point to what is important in life. Another thing they have in common is their passion for film. Both of them have written several film scripts. Through numerous books, Erlend Loe has created beloved characters that most Norwegian readers are familiar with. Kurt, Doppler, and I also have to mention Bongo the Moose. His book Naive Super, which was his international breakthrough, has been translated into more than 20 languages. The novel has reached a new level of fame as we hear that the Democratic candidate to the US presidency, Pete Buttigieg, loved the book so much that he learned Norwegian in order to read it in the original language. David Safier is one of Germany's most popular and best-selling authors in recent years, with more than 5.5 million books sold. He has written 9 novels. 3 of them are translated into Norwegian. He has also written the script for the sitcom Berlin, Berlin, which received an Emmy for Best Comedy. Dårlig Karma, this one, Mrs. Karma, was coined the novel that made Europe laugh and was a huge bestseller in Germany, but also in France, Spain, Italy, just to mention a few. In Norway, we have just published Min familie, andre monstre, My family and other monsters, which I think many can relate to after the long Easter vacation. Before I leave the stage to Erlend Loe and David Safier, I have to point to the emergency exits. There are 2 in this room, here and down there. The conversation will be in English, and it will be streamed to the festival's webpage. Then it just remains for me to say welcome.
Thank you. Yes, hello.
Hello.
And hello to you. I was not familiar with your work, but I have read the books now that are translated into Norwegian, and I'm happy to talk to you about that and about films and other stuff and ideas, like we said in the title for this talk. But I would like to start by quoting this, and you can tell us what it is. Never give up the dreams you have. Never stop living for yourself. Always believe in what you are. What's that?
That's a song, but I don't know which one.
It's from the, at least when I searched for your television series.
Yes,
This is
actually, yes. Sorry, the television series was 15 years ago. Sorry. Yes, that's the lyrics of the song. Yes, of the main titles of my TV series I wrote 15 years ago. Sorry, Berlin. Yes.
In every season, you open with this song.
This song was used in 86 episodes. Yes. But I do not tend to watch my stuff or read my stuff years later. So yes. It sounded familiar, and yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about this series, even though it's a long time ago?
Yeah. It was a TV series which was about a young woman, 19 years old, who came from a small city in Germany to Berlin, and Berlin in 2000 was just like newfound. It was like in the 90s it was a bit sleepy after the reunification, but in 2000 it boomed. It became the new city that everybody loved and everybody wanted to go there. And the girl is named Lolle, and she goes to the city only just to find her boyfriend, who left her, and she wanted to get him back. And then she decided, well, the boyfriend is no good, and I stay in Berlin. And she finds friends, and then she learns a lot of stuff, because the time between 19 and 23 is and 25 is the first time when you are alone, and it's the first time when you make decisions which might have lasting consequences, like choosing your job, choosing what kind of passion you have. And Lotte wants to be a comic book artist, and so we did a lot of animation stuff in the TV series, etc. So it was a very great experience to write it.
Did you write 86 episodes?
We did 86 episodes. I've written 60 of them. The other 26 I've plotted, and I was the head writer, which means that I took the scripts of the other guys, and then I went over it once again, yes.
And how did you get in a position to write this television series?
Sheer luck. And no, actually it's quite strange, because in the 90s it was like this, that Americans came to Germany and wanted, for the Columbia TriStar, and wanted to make sitcoms for German TV. And those were showrunners from sitcoms like Married with Children and Who's the Boss. And they needed some German writers, and they found me. And so I learned a lot of, I wrote scripts for them, and they taught me everything I needed to know about how to write scripts. And then after a few years I said, okay, I do not want to write for the Americans, I don't want to write for myself, I want to do my own thing. And then I had quite a bit of craft that I learned in order to make my own TV series. And then I pitched it to the TV station, and they loved it, and they ordered the first 26 episodes, and then I wrote it for 4 years.
But how did they manage to find you? Had you already published something or written something?
Yeah, I had the scripts for the other TV series which were shown.
Yeah.
And then I was like an established writer, and then they trusted me to do this.
In the transition then from because I only saw the first episode. It's very sympathetic. It's fun, but still kind of traditional idea-wise,
yes.
I would say. And then you take a step years later and publish your first novel. Can you tell us about this transition and also the idea for this first novel, which is Mises Karma in German?
Yes. The transition was like this. When I go back a few years before this TV series, when I was 17. And before finishing the school, everybody else knew what he wanted to do. Some wanted to become doctors, some of my friends wanted to become bankers, and I had no idea. But then we went on the last school trip to Amsterdam, and I bought the book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. And it was like I read the first 10 pages and I knew what I wanted to do. But when you are 17 and you tell everybody, well, I want to become a writer, people say, no, you are crazy, so I never told anybody. Then, now we come a few years later, I was a successful TV writer. It was like this, that a big newspaper in Germany, because as you mentioned, as Turit mentioned, we won the International Emmy Award for Best TV Series. And there was a big article in the newspaper about me, a whole page. And then somebody from a publishing house called the next day and said, well, can you imagine to write a novel? And I answered, good that you are calling. I want to do this since I'm 17. And then I thought about what can I do in a novel, what I cannot do in TV or in film. Because as you know, TV, everything is costing money. If I do crazy stuff, in a movie, you get high budgets and films do not get made. But in a novel, you can write everything. The page of paper always costs the same. So I've decided, if I write a novel, I will write something which cannot be done in TV or in film, at least in Germany. Or, okay, you could if you are Marvel Studios or Disney and you pay $100 million. And Mises Karma, which I don't know, what is the Norwegian translation?
It's bad karma,
Dårlig karma. Is a story about a very successful TV person who is a talk show host, and she's not a very nice person, and then she dies a sudden death, and she awakes as an aunt. What is aunt and?
Enøyde.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she awakes as an aunt, Amalie, and Buddha comes to her and says, "Well, you did not earn a lot of good karma. That's why you're reincarnated like this." And then she wants to reunite with her family. And after a while, for instance, she meets the reincarnated Casanova, which is also an ant. And he tells her the rules. The rules are you need to get good karma. Then she asks, and why didn't you? And he said, well, I'm Casanova. And also he has been dead for 200 years and always gets reincarnated as an ant because he doesn't earn good karma. And then she is traveling and she earns good karma. And the first step is that she's becoming a guinea pig, Meerschweinchen. And next she becomes a dog, etc. Until in the end of the novel she gets reunited with the family. So if you hear the story, obviously, if you do this, a lot of special effects, not easy, very costly. So this is an idea which way back then, now I got film offers all the time, but I do not want to make it. But it was like, I want to do stuff, first, which cannot be easily done as movies, and second, which are ideas where I think, okay, I never heard it, I've never seen this story.
It's very, both in this one and in the one called, in Norwegian, Apokalypse på tirsdag, Jesus liebt.
Yeah, Jesus liebt mich, yeah. Jesus loves me. It's a romantic comedy with Jesus.
And also the Happy Family book that you,
yes.
Min familie og andre monstre. It's very, very clear ideas, very high concept, yes. I would say.
Yeah, high concept ideas, yes.
Is this something you just get it, or you search for it?
Well, I'm searching for these high concept ideas, as they are called, and they are different. They are coming differently together. For instance, the new book "Happy Family" in German and "Mi Familia"
and other monsters.
Other monsters. The first, well, I have a family, so I knew I want to write about a family. And I had the idea to write about a family for 2 years and all the problems a family has, but it took a long while. And then I thought, okay, they have to change into something, and but in order to be happy again. But in what do they change? Do they change into animals? And then later on, after 1.5 years about thinking about the ideas, sometimes I knew, okay, they change into monsters, and then they try, and as monsters they come back together and be happy again. When it comes to Jesus Loves Me, it was like I was always fascinated because the Bible stories are obviously fantastic stories that still hold a grasp on people. And I was always interested into Adam and Eva. And there's a Mark Twain book about Adam and Eva. And I wanted to, but I never got an idea how to get Adam and Eva into our world. But then I remembered, well, Jesus in the end of the Bible, he will come back in the Offenbarung des Johannes, in the last chapters of the Bible, there is stated that Jesus will come back for the final, what is it called, final judgment. And I thought, okay, well, that's natural. He will come. So he will come, and what if, when he will come here, he falls in love with a normal woman? And then this is the story of Jesus Loves Me, the love story of a normal woman, 35 years old, that falls in love with Jesus, who comes back for the final judgment.
Is it? Do you do other work while you are thinking about these ideas?
These are the ideas I'm thinking about on long walks, or running, or jogging. Sometimes in bed, sometimes in the bathtub. It's like always working, always thinking about ideas. I have quite a few ideas always, which I'm searching, which I think it might be interesting. Not all ideas are like, even if I love them, might be that my editor is saying, not so much interested in that.
Already at the idea level?
Yes. Sometimes it's like, sometimes there's just one sentence. For instance, a novel I wrote 7 years ago, it's called Moo, which is about 3 cows. Cows? What is cows?
Yeah.
3 cows who learn that life in India is better for them. And they want to travel to India. And that's the story. And this is like 2 sentences, and I said it to my editor, and she said, I love it. So we make this book. And sometimes she is saying, I do not understand. Then she's so nice, she gives it to others in her editorial, and if they do not understand it as well, I think, okay, maybe it's not a good idea.
And if she had said, no, I don't like it, you'd put it away, the Moo idea?
If I do not want, well, I have quite a lot of ideas, and you talk about why is it not right, and I think about with my editor in a partnership. It's like she is having my back. Because, as you know, a publishing house is a big company with marketing and everything. And she is the one who has to sell it in her house, to marketing, to her superiors and everything. And I make her life easier to support me if she believes in what I'm doing. So, and she believed in one idea. As you know, I've written a Holocaust novel, a serious novel about the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, and she had my back when everybody didn't have it. So I think it's very important to have somebody who supports you, and I do not want to make it for her difficult. When she doesn't believe in it, it's for her more difficult to fight for me.
Sure. A little bit more about how you work with these ideas. Do you have a number of ideas and you go through them all and you discard some and you continue with some? Yes. Do you start writing immediately sometimes or always developing in the back of the head?
I'm always developing in the back of my head about ideas, what I would like to write. For instance, I know what I want to write for the next 4 books. Which doesn't mean that these are the next 4 books, but it's like a constant competition about ideas in my head. And then when it comes to writing, and when I finish something, I start with the best idea of those I have. I think, okay, this is the best one of those 2, 3, 4 ideas I have, and then I start with this book. This doesn't necessarily mean that's the best idea I ever had, but it's the best idea I have at this moment.
Just something I noticed both in this television series, this Lola character, she comes from a place called Malente. I had to search it up, and it turns out that also in the Jesus Loves Me novel, it takes place in Malente, which is a small town close to the north. What do you call it?
Actually, it's the Eastern Sea.
Yeah, Östersjön.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, just simple. I've been there. It's a small town, and we produced a TV series there, and I've been there quite a lot. And it was very pedestrian. It was very simple. I needed a simple place that contrasts Berlin. So you just make the transition from a small town to the big, bubbling city that is Berlin. So and later on in Jesus Loves Me, it was like, okay, if Jesus comes back to our times to find, because he's not quite sure about the final judgment thing. Is it okay to kill all the people, like is stated in the Bible, that are not believing in God? And then I thought, okay, it might be fun if he comes to a small city that is very pedestrian, not to Berlin, but just to this small place. So, yeah, I liked it very much.
When I read your books and later saw this first episode, and also heard that you had been working on these American shows, I was thinking, is it conscious or is it just me when I read your books, that you write books a little bit in the same way that you write or would have written a situation comedy, a sitcom? Because the number of fun stuff, it's very dense in your book. It's not you have a fun thing here or a joke here, and then 5 pages later you have a new one. It's like all the time.
Yes, because I'm bored easily, and so I have a very the funny books. I have 9 novels, 7 are funny, 2 are serious. They are written a bit more like a sitcom, because at a sitcom you say 3 jokes a minute. That's the bar.
You have more.
Yeah, because I'm crazy. And what else is the same thing, which I learned even more from screenplays, is only to write down what is necessary. In a screenplay, you just write. You don't have much place to write. You just write down what the actors, what the director, what the people who build the stage need to know. So, for instance, in a screenplay, you just write 2 people and on a stage and a table. If this glass is important because later in the story I throw it into his face or he in mine, then you have to write the glass. You do not have to write the glass in a screenplay if it isn't used. So in my novels, I always think about what does the writer need, the reader need, in order to make in his head a picture. And so I build it down. For instance, when we talk about Malente, readers down in Germany, most of them haven't been to Malente. But I described like Fußgängerzone. That's a difficult word.
It's a crossing.
Where the shops are and no cars are running. So where cars aren't allowed to go. So I just write Fußgängerzone, Kleinstadt Fußgängerzone. So this street in a small city. Now I do not have to describe everything because everybody knows such a street in a small city. So that's what I learned from screenwriting, just writing down this stuff the reader in the book needs in order to make a picture, and not to make it hard for him. If I describe so many things, it's getting complicated for the reader. So I learned much more from screenwriting for my novels.
Is your writing process spontaneous, and do you improvise from day to day, or do you know all the time?
So first, when I learned from the Americans, it was very rough because you have to write everything down and in all the steps and in advance, and everything is planned because they liked it more like a clockwork. And I learned this craft from them, but later on it was like at Berlin, because I wrote so many episodes, they were already shooting and we didn't have the time to plan anything out. So sometimes I wrote a script in 3 days. And I didn't know when I started what will happen. And Stephen King says, if I'm surprised what the characters are doing, there's a big chance that the readers are surprised as well. And that's the way I write now. So I start with the general idea, with the character, and then I trust the characters to show me the way through the story and what has happened. So I do not plan anything out anymore, which I did 20 years ago for TV. I just let the characters lead me through the stories. Let me show you where it's going.
Even in the Mrs. Karma book?
No, I just had the general steps of the animals in the Karma book. I knew I want to start with an ant. But for instance, it was like I give you an example. Around page 15 or something like this, she is looking into a mirror and she's thinking about another man, and I think, okay, who's the other man? And then, she has a certain affection for him. And then on page 30, right before she dies, she goes to bed with him. And she's betraying her husband with this man. This is something which wasn't planned, which just happened. So I look where the characters are leading me, yes. Which isn't easy. It sounds easier than it is. It takes. It still is a lot of work. It's a certain frame of mind you have to get yourself into, but it's much more exciting for me myself. You know, I sit on a novel like 9 months. If I knew everything in advance, I would be very bored to write it down.
I know. Yes. And I agree.
Are you a bored or you?
I'm not bored.
Yeah,
no.
that's good.
I plan very little. I have also written many novels, but not one of them has been made into a board game.
Yeah.
And when I researched you, I found that Bad Karma, Dårlig Karma, is a board game. So that made me laugh. All players died in the beginning of the game and are reborn due to their bad karma as an ant. The goal of the game is to become a man again. Therefore, the players have to collect karma by building their lifelines and donate cards for the lifelines of other players, etc. It's a long... Do you play this often?
I've never played.
Have you seen it?
Yeah. I've got 2 copies in my house, but I've never played it, no.
But
I'm not fond of board games.
No.
Yeah.
But this makes me think that can you walk the streets of Germany without being bothered?
As probably you know yourself, I do not get thrown board games at my head because the game is so bad. No, it's as you know, writers aren't as famous as people think. If you go tomorrow on the streets out of context and Dan Brown, for instance, comes by and you do not know that he is in the city, or J.K. Rowling, or whatever, the most famous writers who are on, then you probably wouldn't recognize Dan Brown or anybody else. So I'm not recognized often, so it's just more strange happenings when I'm recognized. So sometimes when somebody's coming to you, then he really has to be a fan. He really has had to be seen a photo of mine or an interview of mine where I looked the same like I do now. So I don't know how's it with you. Maybe it's different in Norway for you, but
no, I can move around.
Yeah. So it's not like actors.
No.
When you go with actors to a city, it's or with TV stars or everything. That's a total different. With one of the most famous comedian, I was in Italy, and he was like he was not shaved and everything, and he looked like a poor German tourist with sandals and everything. And we were in a church, and like 5 people came to him and wanted to have autographs. So it was like in another country, in another city, and he was not so. And as a writer, nobody knows you.
I see that the time is running out, but I have one last question. You say you have written 9 novels, 7 funny ones and 2 serious ones. How do you manage to be taken serious with the 2 that are not funny? And is this something that you have?
Yeah, well, we before I did the Holocaust novel, there was a lot of we did communication with the booksellers, and they got an advance reading copy, and they loved the book, and so and they were at first it's like, okay, the funny guy writes about the Holocaust, but I have I have family history with the Holocaust, and and they loved the novel, so it became a bestseller because they said it to their they gave it to their customers. So actually, it was fairly easy if the novel is good. Oh, not good, but appreciated. So I cannot say my novel is good, but the people loved the novel, so it was fairly easy to make the transition because it was so far away, funny and Holocaust. So it was so far.
But is this something that has been? Have you thought about it? Has it bothered you? I'm the funny guy.
No, actually, comedies are much harder to write
than Holocaust books.
Yes, because in order to make a joke work, you need in a good comedy, you need the same things. You need another story. You need characters, plot, empathy, everything. But in a comedy, in addition, you need jokes. So, and a joke is much harder to write because a joke, in order to work, only has one solution. You cannot change 2 or 3 words. If you want to just describe something or have a feeling or a dramatic, a drama situation, you can describe with different words. It's easier to write, but a joke has to be on point. It has to be worked on and worked on and worked on in order to work. Yes, and comedy is. I need for a comedy page like double the time I need for a drama page.
But the readers, they don't care about this. They don't know that.
No, they don't know this. It's just not. I just want to say that for me, for me, it's like I'm not bothered that I'm a funny guy because I love. When I was a child, my heroes were like Woody Allen, Charlie Chaplin, Mad Magazine. This was what I aspired to, Billy Wilder, which I aspired to be. So for me, this was always like, well, these are kings. So I'm not bothered by, and I'm not flattered by being now recognized as the guy who can also write drama. So it's just like, in my mind, comedy is harder, and comedy is at least as much worth as drama. For me, for my personal stuff, and what other people are thinking, so I cannot influence, and I do not care in a good way.
Thank you. I was happy to
be
acquainted with your work. And to meet you. And thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much to David Safier and Erlend Loe for this very interesting talk. And I understand that I have to check out this board game.
It's not translated in Norwegian. But Bazaar can. I guess they can get the life.